So Brian, if you want to capture your information about the surface itself, you've got two ways of doing it. The command that you have, which is the find surface area command, the way you had your data set up, you had these lines like these ones right here. If I click on these, let's grab these for a second, and this one over here. These lines were all set up as sharpen texture boundary like this. So if you do that, then when you try to do the surface area, if you use those, they're both break lines because they're 3D lines that you include in the model, and they're texture boundaries. So when you try to get the surface area, it's going to find you the area up to and including those lines. So in other words, if I set it to this and then I click here as my surface, it would find me the area of the surface between here and here, or between here and here, or between here and here, or between here and here. It wouldn't do the whole thing. So these lines that I've got highlighted, you typically want to set those to sharp only, and that way they're not going to act as a texture boundary. So when you run the find surface area command, if you say only texture edges, then you can click in the surface here, make sure you pick the detention basin first, and then click on here. That will highlight the area, and it tells you it's 787 square yards, right? And if you want to put the text and label it, then you can do that, and then you can say put it on this layer, whatever, and then you can say OK, and it will label it for you. And then you can use things like the leader line command in the drafting menu. If you go to leader lines, is that here, then you can kind of say the target label is this one, and you can move it to over here, right? And then you can move the leader end itself. If you click over here, click on this, and you can grab the leader and put it where you want to place it, in terms of referring to where you want, and then you can say close. At that point, now that's giving you an area of of that information. Now, what I said earlier on is if you make one of these lines a surface sharpen texture boundary, then when you do a volume or a surface area between those, if I go to find surface area now, and I say pick the detention basin and then say only to texture edges, now if I click in here, it will just find you the point up to that break line. And if I click in any of these other areas like here, it will find it between that break line and that one. So each time I add one of these as a break line with sharpened texture on it, so I do the same thing with these and put them back to how you had it. Change these to sharpened texture here. Then when you do the volumes here now, find surface, then you can say only texture edges again, pick detention basin, and now when you click in these, it will only give you these individual strips, because you've got the limits to the sharpen texture boundary. And the same would apply if you use any break line, because any break line is the same thing basically. So therefore you're getting these because these are break lines in the model, so it will limit it to that automatically. So if you want to know the individual areas, then you can do it by break line. But if you set them to texture boundaries or not, then you can limit the areas that you're determining using the command. And you can cross-check this again. If I go back to, it was 787 square yards, this number here, right, 787. And if you run like F12 to get to the command pane, and you go to report options, in report options there's an option in here called surface information report, and this one will also give you the same information. So you can say pick detention basin, and that will give you the whole surface area, and you can say OK. At that point now it's running a report, and in here you can see 787 and 760, so you're getting the same exact answer as I gave you with our surface information report. The only difference between the two is ours does texture boundaries and this doesn't. This just basically takes the whole surface area. So if you want to break down the area and get different areas, then you'd be better off using our command than this one. But this one will give you a report in the same way, depending on how you set it up. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question. If it doesn't, give me a call back. I'll be working tonight, so you can call me this evening or we can talk tomorrow. Okay, all right, thanks.